Hey everyone, welcome to today's show on Wealth Strategy Secrets. Today we're joined by Doug Middleton. Doug is a technology enthusiast, lifelong learner, and avid investor. He spent the last 2 decades in IT sales and entrepreneurship with a focus on customer ROI and success. Today he helps clients achieve significant tax savings and energy independence through solar solutions. Doug lives in Northern Virginia with his amazing wife, Jessica, of 21 years, who has blessed him with 3 amazing children. Doug, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to be here.
Yeah, no, really excited about the conversation today. And I think listeners are going to get a ton of value because I think they know us by now, right? And, investing is it's really a lot about financial engineering, right? And coming up with different hacks and different things that you can do to actually increase your wealth, reduce some of your biggest expenses like taxes. And I know that there's a lot of great benefits around solar. So excited to dive in today and get into what some of those benefits might be for investors and business owners. But before we do that, why don't we start off and tell the audience a little bit about your background and really how you became, an investor, entrepreneur. How did it start for you?
Yeah, great, Dave. So I'd say, obviously, my core is kind of technology. I've loved it for decades at this point. For me, originally some of my intersection of technology and investing was back in the stock market in the pre-2001 dot-bomb era. A lot of internet technologies exploding, ridiculous growth on stocks. So that lured me into some of the speculative investing, and I got burned like a lot of people did in the dot-bomb collapse, right? So, but for me, that was sort of the beginning of looking at what a company's worth, what their stock is valued at, and looking at just the overall concept of investing, right? Making some educated bets on technologies and doing your best due diligence to see what combination you make there and how that's going to pay off. So that was sort of the beginning, and it took me, as I think it does a lot of people, a long time for me to arrive at the decision point of decoupling from the stock market. So I've been on a journey the last couple of years. You've been a big help to me personally around just rethinking some of that traditional mindset.
Yeah, that's great. And it's been so amazing to watch you on the journey, Doug, right? Just get, more and more clarity and confidence with the decisions that you've made. And we have, a number of investors, right, who've made this similar journey. And wherever you are, right, on the path, we're always learning, we're always evolving, we're trying to get smarter with the things that we do. But it's amazing, right, because we see, at a time where there's so much uncertainty out in the world, the markets are down 25 to 30%, and you just have no control. Right. And it's really just a one-dimensional investment. And so many people are just really grateful that they actually did decouple from the market, as we've been talking for the past few years. And we're now into tangible assets and things. So super rewarding for me to see, kind of the progress and evolution that you've had. And, that's what we're here to do, is try to help people kind of get different insights. So grateful for you, sharing those insights with folks.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Dave.
All right. So how about let's jump into a little bit around the solar, right? And again, we're always looking for, different hacks, different innovative ideas, different strategies to, reduce taxes, your number one biggest expense that you have, try to increase that investable capital that you have. So tell us a little bit about how you arrived at this, solution for solar. What really is it? How could people deploy it?
Yeah, sure. So 12 years ago, I looked at solar. I've loved the technology for a long time, but interest rates back then were such that people had to essentially pay for the whole system up front. So that led me down the path of what's my ROI, and it was 18 to 20 years, and said that's just not a good investment for me. I can make my money work other places. I'll just keep buying my kilowatts from the electric company. So what's changed since then is that now, at least historically, interest rates are still at a relatively low level for solar loans. So it's more of a cash flow discussion at this point. So I'm going solar personally, and what that means for me is I'm actually going to be paying less on a monthly basis for my energy costs with the solar loan than I was paying the electric company. And there's a 30% federal income tax credit, and there's a lot of other benefits as well. So there was essentially no reason for me not to go solar. And in Virginia, where I live, so the power costs are relatively cheap compared to the rest of the country, but there was still a very positive, compelling financial case for me to flip the switch.
Got it. So people who deploy the solar system can expect a 30% tax credit. Is that correct? Or how does that work?
Yes, there's a 30% tax credit. There's a lot of flexibility on that. So with recent legislation, that was bumped from 26% up to 30%. And that also includes not just the cost of the solar system, but also if you have to have trees trimmed or removed, if you have to have a roof replaced because your roof is too old to justify putting a brand new solar system onto. So all those things go into that 30% tax credit. So it's a really compelling event if people have a roof that they know is on its last leg. That's never been a better time for them to think about the economics of solar.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's another interesting component people might not really think of, and especially in the time that we're living in here, late 2022. And it's really this concept of energy independence, right? And we're starting to see this, form of, independence in a lot of ways, right? I think there's a big shift in manufacturing across the country now and not being so globalized, right? And there's a trend to start becoming deglobalized, right? So a lot of that manufacturing is coming back onshore in the U.S. where we can control the supply chain and things like that. So when I really look at things from an energy perspective, having energy independence is very powerful. And, I can personally speak to that because having just moved to Florida and having gone through Hurricane Ian, there were folks out of power for weeks on end, right? So that's a major disruptor, to your business, to your life, your family and everything. So this concept, tell us your thoughts a little bit more around, energy independence and how that can support it.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Dave. I mean, there's a lot in terms of, I would say your personal family's energy independence, but it's also energy security. So as a large portion of the country is looking at very significant price inflation for residential electricity costs, when you go solar, you are taking complete control of what your future costs are. It's a fixed interest rate. There's no variability. There's no uncertainty. There's no prepayment penalties as well. So there's a lot of flexibility on if things change and you want to, make aggressive payments on it, go for it. But it's really, I think, that combination of energy independence, but then the security of knowing from a financial perspective, regardless of, fuel and other costs that continue to inflate, my costs are completely fixed. And then at the end of that loan period, then essentially my energy is free. So that's even more exciting.
Yeah. So tell us how it really works. So let's say, I was building a new house and I wanted to go solar, I was fixing, I had an older house, I was doing a renovation regardless of the scenario, but, I made the decision to go solar. What would be the steps? What would it take and what would be your advice?
Sure. So, and that's one of the aspects I really enjoy working with people is there are a lot of variables that factor into what a system is going to look like for their home. So you have to factor in what is your family's energy use requirement. So looking back at the last 12 months of your electrical costs so that the design of your system is custom for your needs. Your neighbor next door, if they have a pool and they run their thermostat, very aggressively, they may have twice the energy cost of what you do. So it really depends on, for your family, what are your energy costs. Second is going to be the dimensions of your roof, the angles that they're pointing. South is kind of the ideal exposure in our northern hemisphere for grabbing maximum power from the sun. So there's considerations there, as well as aesthetic concerns. Some people are absolutely against putting solar on the front of the roof. So then we look at sort of multiple scenarios of, if you have the panels on the back, what's that going to do to the cost of your overall project versus if they're on the front. So there's kind of a lot of factors for that. And then also just kind of, some of the nuts and bolts of the inverters. There's a lot of options there, the equipment. So just kind of working with the customer and designing something for them that then has a positive financial impact compared to what they're paying with their electric company.
Yeah, makes sense. And so if you were to break down really the financial components of this, how would that really look?
So essentially the finances, most people, I would say, myself included, are opting for like a 25-year loan. The benefit of that, although it sounds like it's a long time period, is that allows you to have monthly payments on the equipment that is going to be on par with what your existing electric bill is. In some states like California, you can probably get away with a 15-year loan and still have it be on par because the energy costs are so expensive in California. But most people are interested in sort of that cash flow sort of perspective. So doing that with a 25-year loan, fixing that interest rate, you're going to be about on par with what your electric bill is averaged over the 12 months. A lot of states now, Dave, and in Virginia as well, they have the Solar Renewable Energy Credit, or SREC. That's basically a guaranteed credit that you get for generating renewable energy. So taking your $200 a month electric bill or your solar loan and getting that down, say, in the 120 range net because of that refund that you're getting. And what's at work there is that basically the electric companies or utilities are facing fines for not keeping up with the state mandates for producing their own renewable energy through solar, wind, etc. And so instead of them paying those higher fines, they opt for buying your renewable energy credits on the renewable energy exchange. So that's how, right out of the gate, with no money down and a low fixed interest rate, people are able to start saving money in month one, in addition to getting all of the tax benefits of the project.
Got it. And how, in this current interest rate environment, how are you able to secure, do you have like certain lenders who specialize in this that, can give you these enhanced rates?
Yes. Yeah. There's a whole industry, solar lending industry. So there's probably 4 or 5 big lenders in that area that specialize on that. And with the Fed still continuing to adjust interest rates, even the solar loans are continuing to increase in price. So there is sort of like a compelling event for people on the fence with solar right now that, interest rates are going to continue to rise, and the solar loans, although they're lagging behind what the Fed is doing, they are probably on a 60 to 90 day trailing behind what the Fed is doing. So it's definitely being affected.
What are you seeing as like an average rate right now on, say, if you were to do this for a 25-year term, I think you mentioned?
Yep. Yeah. For 25-year term, the best rates are around 2.99.
Got it. So definitely competitive.
Yes, absolutely.
What if everything you thought you knew about investing was wrong? Would you like to create a wealth strategy like the top 1% have and get exclusive access to top private equity deals that provide downside protection, tax efficiency, predictable cash flow, and have a lucrative upside? Discover how with the Pantheon Advantage and join our investor club today at pantheoninvest.com.
So you're making your money based on lowering your cost over time. You're fixing your cost over time, and in addition to that, you're also getting these tax credits that are coming in.
Yes, and the tax credits as essentially just a regular taxpayer, those are pretty compelling at the 30%. One thing I want to call out is that for people that are small business owners and people that are small business owners with a home-based business, the potential for tax write-offs on your solar system are probably between 80 and 100%. Consult with your tax professional, of course, but there's a whole nother level of tax savings available for your listeners that have their own businesses.
Yeah, interesting. And I know a lot of our listeners do have their own businesses, and that is interesting. It's probably something they haven't really thought of in the past, right? But could be a great, especially now that we're at year end right now, great way to identify some additional tax savings by, applying solar to your business. Or how about in the case of, commercial real estate properties or people who might have rental real estate properties?
Yeah, that's another good area. There's a lot of property owners that are recognizing very healthy tax benefits for going solar on their rental properties as well.
Yeah, excellent. And I know you shared a chart earlier, Doug. Would you like to talk through some of the components of that and share that with the audience?
Yeah, sure. So essentially looking at sort of like a 25 or a 30-year span for a person who's about to go solar, if they are fixing their energy cost through solar, there's just a lot of peace of mind around that. In the chart, essentially 3.86% annual inflation is what was projected, which I think is very conservative in this economy. You're going to see over a tripling of that electric bill from your utility company if everything else remains constant. So all of a sudden, 5, 10, 15 years from now, what was a negligible bill for you now is on par with like a car loan payment. Instead, fixing your energy costs by going solar is completely predictable, and it makes so much sense from a looking at sort of the long term. We all fall into that trap of just sort of, what do I have this month? What's my near-term focus? But when you kind of take the lens open a little bit more and look at a long-term approach, you're literally talking about $100,000 of savings for a regular-sized single-family home in cheap power states like Virginia. You're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars of savings in California or Hawaii.
Interesting. And so, can you give us a little bit of a breakdown by state? What are some of the most expensive states outside of California and Hawaii where this has even increased value?
Sure. So New England is an area that's facing, and especially if people just Google New England electricity costs, you're going to see articles as recent as today and this week around some of the projected spikes in electricity costs. And it's not just limited to that. There's heating oil and other inflation going on. But New England is a hotbed of, I'd say, very steep increases in electricity. Texas and Florida are other good areas where there's not just rising electricity costs, but power availability challenges. So a lot of people where they are connected to a grid that is not reliable are looking at solar and battery systems in concert so that while they may stay connected to the grid on a daily basis, they're not dependent on the grid for their long-term power. So those are other good markets where people are solar is top of mind of a lot of homeowners because it's more of an energy security discussion with them because their power is disrupted on a regular basis.
Right. And do you think, really from a cost perspective, right, is there anything that comes into the equation with respect to the intensity of the sun? So if you live in a place like, California, Arizona, Florida, where there's much more intensity of the sun, there's more hours of sunlight in the day, are those systems a little bit more efficient than, say, if you live in the Northeast?
Yes, those systems will definitely produce higher output. The same system in Arizona is going to produce significantly more than if that's at a northern latitude, right? So that essentially lowers their buy-in cost and just makes their economics all the more attractive. But even in northern states, New England, et cetera, there's still positive outcomes, especially if they're in areas where there's elevated electricity costs. Those systems don't have to be as productive as the ones in those southern states. So it really does, I would say in my experience, I haven't seen where somebody can point to kind of the local environment saying, it's just, it doesn't make sense for me. The exception would be if they have a lot where there's just complete tree cover and, they're not open to kind of thinning some of that and getting sunlight down to the roof surface.
Yeah. And are there any other contributing factors to, why you would make a push towards solar? Like, let's say, if you have an electric vehicle, I'm not really sure what the energy, increasing of usage is on something like that, but are there any other, reasons like that might, drive you towards this type of solution?
Yeah, for sure. So EVs will only add a couple percent of your total annual powering cost. So let's just say it's like 2 or 3%. So it's gonna be a small blip, but it's not gonna be that noticeable. But if you decide to go solar, the cost associated with getting your house ready, including the charging apparatus in your garage, the electrical wiring, any sub panels, all of that work is part of the solar project, which still gets that 30% tax credit. So
very nice.
It's a very nice time to say, yes, we're thinking about an EV. Well, then have your solar project actually get all of the infrastructure done in your house as part of that project. So everything's already wired and you've got that, your house 100% EV ready.
Yeah. Got it. Great. Any, final thoughts around, just investing in solar? Why do you think this is a smart decision, or any, closing thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience?
So I'd say I'm very, very happy and excited being in the solar industry. It's just, I think, great technology. There's some feel-good byproducts around creating a cleaner future for our descendants, right? Which is nice. I'd say, my closing thought would be to just challenge people to shop around if they're thinking about solar. There's a lot of upstart companies. There's a lot of, it is sort of a gold rush right now in terms of small businesses and people positioning that they can do that. A lot of Me Too's where roofing companies are getting into solar, and so you see sort of some convergence between different home services companies that are like, hey, solar's hot, let's get into it. So really do some diligence on the company that you're going to be getting proposals from, get multiple proposals, and pay attention to the warranties that the company is offering you in terms of solar production, the equipment itself. All those things factor into making sure that you have a system that's going to be, putting a smile on your face 10, 15, 20 years from now, not just at install.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And Doug, so tell us, just transitioning a little bit here, I know you're a high performer, go-getter. Tell us, what is one of the top productivity habits that you've developed over the past years?
Well, that's a good question. So for me, it's usually just keeping my notepad close by, right? I have like a lot of thoughts coming into my brain. So just having the ability to capture those things as they're coming into my mind, and then just circling back to those, reprioritizing them, crossing things off the list. I'm a results-oriented sort of person, so the more things I can cross off the list, that sort of like releases positive endorphins. I'm like, yes, I'm being productive, but there's a lot of things that come through my mind, and sometimes if I don't have something close by to capture that, there's no guarantee it's going to come back, right? So for me, it's capturing things on physical paper. That's important to me.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's really one of the first things how I start off my week is I work on my weekly planner before I've even looked at email or anything else. And so I go through what are my top priorities for the week, things that I'm working on, and each day, what I want to get done. And it is scientifically proven that you're right. There is actually a dopamine release when you physically, check something off of your list on paper. So, we live in such a digital age, and there's millions of apps and things to manage this, but it's powerful how much writing things down can really help you be organized, be efficient, really be intentional as well about it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Kind of. I think it also sort of trains your brain to filter out just some of the noise and everything else, right? Like just getting those things down, regardless of the other thoughts that may be flying through your head. You're just kind of pulling out the ones that are worth journaling down and capturing, right?
Yeah. No, awesome. And so, Doug, if you could leave just one piece of advice to listeners about how they could accelerate their wealth trajectory, what would it be?
Rethink debt and leverage in a disciplined manner. So the traditional thinking is that debt is bad, right? Pay off your mortgage, get that down. But as you and others have said, Dave, like your annual rate of return on your equity is zero every single year. So be thinking about ways that instead of paying down that mortgage, that you and your family can have a educated, methodical, premeditated investment strategy for growing your wealth versus just paying off your mortgage early and not really having anything to show for it until you actually sell that property.
Yeah, sage advice, Doug. Awesome. Well, it's been such a privilege to have the opportunity to talk to you today, Doug, and really share, your thoughts on really a great solution, I think, for people on how they can, gain energy independence, how they can reduce their taxes, and really be, more efficient, right, with their costs over time. So, do you have any place where investors can reach out to you if people want to connect or learn more? What would be the best place?
Yeah, I do. The easiest place for them to connect with me is my solar website, which is powur.com/Doug.Middleton. That's power with a U. And that's basically just my landing page, which has my contact info where people can reach out to me and essentially help them answer the question of whether or not solar is right for their home.
Awesome. And we'll make sure to put a link. If you're driving right now, we'll put a link in the show notes for that if you want to check that out. And any other resources you might be able to provide, Doug, that would be awesome.
Awesome. Will do. And Dave, just on a personal note, I appreciate our friendship and your continued efforts for the investor community around sensible, methodical strategies for growing wealth. Like it means a lot.
Yeah, appreciate that, Doug. It's been great having you on the show today, and look forward to seeing you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave.
All right, take care.